But thank you very much for joining us today, everyone. So I'm Caroline. I work for the Ethical Goods Consultancy, and we work with charities and businesses on all areas of social impact, corporate social responsibility, enterprise-led development, etc. So really glad you could all join us today. We've been partnering with Xapien for a few months now. We were introduced to them back in the summer, and we think what they do is probably a game changer for the charity sector in terms of the level of detail and analysis you can get on your donors, trustees, and anybody else that you want to do business with. Obviously, we work in a very connected world these days. Everything is done online. And whilst GDPR has made wealth screening quite difficult, there are lots of other tools at your disposal for managing and looking after your donors, whether they're corporate donors, individual donors, could be brand ambassadors, they could be staff members. So there's lots of ways that you can get information about those people through online means. And Xapien have brought this tool together to enable you to do that easily. Obviously, we've all seen what happens when donors, brand ambassadors go rogue in the world. Dare I mention Kanye and his Nike deal? There's a lot of people putting profit ahead of reputation out there, and as a charity we can't afford to do that, or you can't afford to do that. So you're not immune from these issues. So it's really important that you know exactly who you're working with and who you're dealing with, but also the source of funds. So when you're you're out there in the marketplace talking about why people should support you, which is absolutely crucial, it's really understand that you as a charity have done that due diligence to know where that money's coming from, so that those source of funds aren't in conflict with your brand. Obviously, some of you may or may not be aware of the sort of decisions that your charity might take when you're looking at investments. So your investment policy as a charity is often driven by your ethics and your values. So not very obvious example, a cancer charity wouldn't want to be investing in tobacco or alcohol products. In that same way, you should be doing that sort of same due diligence on your donors. So who are the sort of donors that you actually want to accept money from? Obviously, we're not talking about your average, regular donor giving you £10 a month. But when it comes to, high net worth individuals, corporate donors, it's really important that those people meet your ethics and your values as an organization, so that you're not putting yourself at risk, because chasing the money is obviously an all-time consuming thing, but you don't want to risk getting into any hot water. So it's really important that you know who those donors are, but also the opportunity for mapping a wider network for your charity. So fundraising, really important when it comes to existing donors and knowing who your donors are, but who are those future donors, whether they're corporate partners or individuals that you want to work with. So being able to map that network and working out from those existing donors that you work with, who else looks like them, who could potentially be your donors of the future. And this sort of information is available through the Xapien tool, so which is why we're really proud to be partnering with them. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Becca and Jess from Xapien. Thank you very much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the session.
So I'm firstly, just an introduction to myself. I'm Jess, and I'm head of comms and partnerships at Xapien. So I lead on all of our marketing staff and partnerships with the great guys at Ethical Goods and other people. And so a bit of background to Xapien and why we exist. The stakes are high when it comes to a charity's reputation and the donations that they accept. Because increasingly, no matter what size your charity is or your university, I know there'll be people joining from a range of different institutions at the moment. Organizations of all shapes and sizes depend upon their brand in order to raise money and be able to continue raising money to do the good work that they do. But increasingly, particularly as the internet grows and grows, your brand is sort of online and exposed for everyone to see. The internet is your shop window. And so if you get something wrong, someone will pick that up, whether it's on social media or wherever it is, and it might land on the front page of the Times. And then that's it, that's out there forever. And you can, there's lots of work that can be done, brand management, PR, to kind of overcome those challenges, but it will probably be out there on the internet and will be a discredit to your organization. So what's the best sort of mitigation strategy is not to get it wrong in the first place. And so to make sure that you're really careful in terms of your partnerships and the people that you work with, donors, major donors, trustees, whoever it is, and make sure that they're not going to put you at risk. You can control your own organization, your own people within it, or your own reputation, but it's all those external third parties that you don't really have much control over. So you need to do your due diligence early on to get a sense of who they are and how that might impact your organization. Because I should say, I don't want to labor too much on the negative thing. If that can be a really great asset, if they have a wonderful reputation, a wonderful network, then that's exactly what you're looking for, right? You need to watch out for the risks, but look for the opportunities. The challenge, of course, is finding out about those people. The other side of the growth of the internet is that it's vast and there's so much information out there, which can potentially be really valuable and useful, but actually finding it and gathering it is an increasingly complex and unmanageable task. And so, Caroline mentioned there are lots of tools that are out there that can help you, but search engines, Google, the biggest tool on the planet, it's not really fit for purpose anymore, given how much information there is, because you're still going to have to spend 4 to 6 hours researching across those different platforms, entering different pieces of context and information, reading through the 2 million results that you've got here and figuring out what is about your person, what is not about your person, what is relevant, what is interesting. And so organizations that are aware of these risks face they have to make a choice, basically, where they either invest in a team or invest significant resources in terms of time and money researching each of these individual donors and prospects. So they maybe have to hire in new people, and it's a significant outlay, or they're just going to have to go and risk exposed because they can't really afford it. And it's a sort of slight misnomer of a risk-based decision, which is really a resource-based decision. You can't afford it. And so you're just going to have to go and risk exposed. And then that's the sort of gap that Xapien looks to fill, is between those two, is a fully automated background research report in a few minutes. A fraction of the cost of paying someone else to do it, and a fraction of the time. A typical Xapien report will come back in about 10 minutes. Whereas everyone knows that anyone who's ever done any online research, that sort of, just spend half an hour on it, have a quick look on Google, that doesn't exist. It's pretty impossible to get an idea of someone's online footprint in less than at least 2 or 3 hours, I thought. And so what we've built is an automated research platform that essentially tries to automate that analyst research process of starting with just a name and one piece of context, and then going out there onto the internet and researching across thousands of different platforms using hundreds of different pieces of context, reading across it all, finding out what is about your person, what is not, what is relevant, what is potentially risky, what you need to know about, reading it, drawing it all together, assessing it, and then delivering a consolidated research report that you can then use to make decisions on. And so typically people will say that, it can consolidate 2 days worth of work into about 30 minutes. There will still be, we're not trying to to automate the person out of the process. Of course, that there'll be a human who needs to go through it and make a decision at the end of that research report. But the idea is to get rid of all that sort of grunt work, all of that searching across different platforms and trying to consolidate and assess information away, so that all the human has to do is look at a report and make decisions off the base of it, and then be able to move forward. That's enough for me. I think probably everyone just wants to see it in action, right? So I will hand over to Becca now, which means, yes, Sarah's on it.
Hi everyone, thanks for that, Jess. So yeah, just to give a quick introduction to myself before I share my screen, that I'm an account executive at Xapien, and I work across sort of sales and customer success and product side. So it's kind of a sort of bridge point between what customers think about it, what prospects think about the system, and our sort of product development. So yeah, I always like hearing what people think about the system, what they think we could add, or what they think is working well. So I'm looking forward to hearing some of your thoughts on it today. So given that we're talking about kind of reputational risk, I thought it might be interesting to look at a demo case of someone that has kind of caused a bit of negative media for the charity they donated to. So this Douglas Barrowman, thanks Caroline for that is a demo case, because you might have heard about all the negative press to the Prince's Trust, I think back in sort of August of this year. Because of his association with kind of money laundering, I think. So before going into the report, I just wanted to quickly show you what the search screen looks like, just to show you that it's pretty easy to run a Xapien report. So we just need, for a person report, we just need the person's name and then some context. And this context allows the system to uniquely identify your person and not someone else of the same name. If you're searching a John Smith and you just search on a database, you're going to get thousands of results. But what our system does is actually try and replicate the manual research process and find your John Smith and not the hundreds of other ones, which is why you can give us up to 3 bits of context, either organization names or person names, that tell us that this is your person. And you can also run reports on organizations as well. So foundations or big conglomerates, you can run reports on anything really. And for that, we're pretty flexible with the context for that. You could just put in a location or a sector or just a director name. Their website URL is usually the easiest one for that. So going on to the actual report then, I'll scroll to the top. So this one took about 11 minutes, if I remember correctly. Yes, so it took about 11 minutes, and this guy's pretty high profile. So what happens really is once you kick off a search, the system goes off and basically does the manual research for you. It runs thousands of searches on Google, Bing, on other search engines. It also checks corporate record registries like Open Corporates, Companies House, and Sayari as well, who are an international corporate record provider. And it checks their name on a screening, so PEP sanction and watchlist screener as well. So it's not like a database. We don't have readily available information. It does the searching live for you, which is why it takes 10 minutes. It can take 15 minutes for a big organization report, because every time it finds more information about your person, it runs new searches. And a lot of the information it finds that will actually end up on the cutting room floor, because it will be about someone else of the same name that's not your person. So when you get this report, everything has been verified as being your person, and everything has kind of been put in this nice tidy report where everything is hyperlinked as well. So yeah, on that point that everything is sourced, if I click on this image, it takes me through to the original article. If I click here, it takes me through to where we've got this from. And that's really important for us to be able to show you our work really, and show you where we've got this information from, because we know that from your perspective, it's not just about showing what you found, it's about showing when you found it, what date the article was, really about kind of having all your sources ready. And this just gives you, with a date stamp as well, it just gives you a picture of everything we were able to find about this person on the 18th of November. So it's very useful for a kind of audit process as well, because you can PDF it and just keep that as proof of the research you've done. So scrolling down then, he's come off pretty clean in the screening section. So, this is kind of quite simple compliance, checkbox compliance. Are they sanctioned? Are they on, a terrible watch list? And that might just tell us, no, we're not going to work with this person. But in most cases, it's not that black and white. We have got some political exposure for him, likely because his wife is a Tory peer. But yeah, we'll give you that information, and we'll sort of, all of this information is coming from Comply Advantage, and we also bucket it. So our system goes and see, can we confirm it is your person using a date of birth? Or can we say it's definitely not your person, just someone else of the same name, which is why we have these buckets. So again, it's not, a lot of people do use PEPs and sanctions provider already, but we're just trying to save you some extra time by actually verifying those results there. Then we've got the corporate records section here. So this is where all of their directorships, officerships, all the information we can find is put here. And you can see that we can filter by current roles he's resigned from. You can filter down to see if he's the UBO of these companies. You can filter down to see if he's the person of significant control. You can even filter down to see, does he own 25 to 50% of shares in this company, or 75 to 100%. So it's really, really filterable. And something that's really useful as well is that you can filter down to see any risk. And risk in this section is really kind of corporate record risk. And it's very relevant in this case because we know he had sort of tax evasion accusations, some accounts being overdue with his companies. And these are all coming from the corporate records. We've just labeled it, so it's much easier to go through than having to kind of go through pages and pages of the Gazette and Companies House records, as it can be quite confusing sometimes. So here we can see, for example, this particular company had accounts overdue. There's some more details there about confirmation statement overdue, an active proposal to be striked off the registry. And you can see where we're getting that information from as well. So this is actually coming from all three of our corporate record providers: Open Corporates, Companies House, and Sayari, who do much better kind of internationally in some jurisdictions that are harder to find the corporate records for, like the Middle East and Africa. And you can click through to these results as well to see exactly what the original records are and where we're getting this information from. And, just if someone at the Prince's Trust had ran this report, obviously, it's not that you see the risk and then sometimes you make the decision anyway. But, we'd like to think that if someone had looked at all these risks, then maybe there would have been a different decision, or maybe they would have been more prepared for the potential, reputational backlash. And at least then you have your answers. You can prove that you've done your work, really. Scrolling down then, you can see that we've also got a section on business associates. And this is looking at overlapping directorship. So who's sat on a board of directors of a company at the same time as this person? And we order these people by the amount of overlaps they've had. So this person, for example, has 36 overlaps with him. So you can filter down to see what these companies are. You can click on to get to the original record we've got that from. And yeah, this is very, very useful for mapping out networks of prospects, but also for kind of looking for any potential risk here. If we've got any kind of sanctioned Russian oligarchs in their business associate section, then that's an immediate red flag. And it's very easy as well. If you did want to run a report on someone that has so many overlaps with him, you could just click that button and that will run in the background while you're looking at this report. So yeah, I won't open this section and go through all 150 of those business associates, but it's easy to filter through as well. Okay, and then we've got the location. So these just show you where his companies are registered. We even show you the Google Street View, which can just help if there's mystery around their source of wealth, or they claim to have a big sort of company abroad, but it seems a little bit fishy. It can just help to see what that Street View image is. Sometimes people claim to have a big company, but actually the Street View image is of a car park or a field or something like that raises questions. And on the other hand as well, sometimes thousands of companies will have the same registered address, which also raises red flags. Okay, and then we're getting into the sections. I'm aware that I'm speeding through, but there's a lot to go through, so I'll just hit some of the highlights today. But the sections we're moving on to are what I'd say is really the most time-saving section of the report, and that's how we deal with open source media. So you can see here we've collected all the images you can find of him. We've ordered them by date. They're all hyperlinked as well, so you can get through to the original article. And then here we've shown you all the articles we found on open source media. So you can see there's various different sources going in here. We don't just look at news and media outlets. We look at anything you can find on the index web, and then we allow you to filter down to them. So if you're only interested in, established media sites, you could click on news and media, filter down even to London media, or you can filter by risk categories. And something that distinguishes us actually from other adverse media providers is this distinction between direct risk and indirect risk. So what our system does is actually read the article, and if it finds a risky word, so let's say the word fraud, it can tell if the word is actually associated to your person's name. So for example, Douglas Barrowman was found guilty of fraud. that's risky in an article. But if there's another article that mentions your person on paragraph 1 and then on paragraph 8 mentions fraud when it's talking about someone else, then that's not relevant. But you know, when you Google Douglas Barrowman and fraud, it will be everywhere. So that's why we have the distinction between indirect risk and direct risk. So direct risks are just the risks tied to your person by name. It's always worth having a look at indirect risks as well, because it could be risks to do with his wife, for example, family members, who else? Yeah, business associates. But if you're actually looking at the person, then direct risk is the most important. And what a lot of our users do is actually start at direct risk and then look at indirect risks. So they kind of go on a sort of priority basis. And the same with risk categories as well. So they might start with direct risk and look at crime and judicial risks, and then look at ESG and controversy risks as well, just to get a wider sense of any reputational risks. So if I click on direct risk, then we can see what it looks like when we actually pick up some risks in these articles. So for example, we've picked up the word wrongdoing, deny, and you can actually click on this risk word and see what the sentence is there. So you don't have to click through into the original article and read it. All of these are hyperlinked. So if you did want to get the full picture, you can click through to it. But yeah, our users find that they can get the picture of what's going on really just from clicking on this word. So the National Crime Agency investigation, there's been no arrests were made during simultaneous raids. What else have we got? Yeah, allegations. So yeah, quite a lot of risk. I always like to look at the ratio of how many articles we find versus how many direct risk articles, and 200 to 28, it's not a great ratio. It's about 10% of the articles mentioning him have some direct risk. So yeah, it's maybe sort of a risk score of 6 or 7, and then you can actually dig into what some of those risks are and see how relevant they are to your organization as well. As well as these sort of risk categories as a way of filtering, you can also look at these additional filters. And these allow you really to drill down into his relationships with other organizations, his relationship with particular places. If your charity is based in a particular place and you want to know what their association is to that area. So for example, you can see that there's 120 articles mentioning his wife. And if you click on those, we'll just show you those 120 articles. And there's no limit to how much you can drill down. So you can see, oh, how many articles mention his wife, David Cameron, and Michael Gove. And that will show you just those 6 articles. So it really allows you to drill down and just figure out what his relationships are to his business associates, what web and media surrounds him, and his relationships to family members or political relationships. It's just, yeah, a really easy way of drilling down to find out what you're interested in, rather than having to read through 190 articles, which is what you'd have to do really if you were Googling them. You can also filter by date. So say if you had researched a prospect or you'd done some donor due diligence on someone in 2020, but there's a new donation on the table, or you want to check what's happened since, you can either click on a year or you can actually highlight a time range, and we'll just show you that information there. So you can just see what's happened to this person or what's been said about this person since then. And, you know, some of our users say, well, we only are interested in established news and media sites. But I noticed earlier when I was looking at the direct risks that actually there was a mention of some of the controversies that had been mentioned in these articles this year in an earlier tweet. And, you know, you wouldn't just get that if you were looking at established sources. So yeah, it might be this one here, or something else from Twitter. But it just goes to show that, you know, the reason we don't just show particular sources is because there can be a whisper of a controversy on Twitter or on a blog or something that actually turns into a full-blown allegation a year or so later. So it's just good to look under every stone and know what might come out about your person. Okay, there's a lot more to go into in the web and media section, but in the interest of time, I'll scroll down to the Insight Center. And this section was actually designed with prospect research in mind more than due diligence, really, because Cambridge University were one of our early users, and they said to us, well, you know, it's great that you pick up 200 articles and you scan them all for risk and you show us any risk, but actually there's a wealth of information other than risk in that web and media that we'd want to know about. So that's why we built this section. It just pulls out nuggets of information about the roles he's held, about family members, some descriptions about him, and all of these are sourced as well, so you can see exactly where we're getting them from. We also pick out wealth estimates when you can find them, and previous donations, so previous charitable or political affiliations as well. So we can see the donation to the Prince's Trust, the fact that he's contributed the building of 8 schools in Africa and some charities on the Isle of Man. And again, we've made it very easy for you to see where the source is here, so you can click down on there. We also show you assets and sort of quotes as well, which can be very useful. So useful for understanding the propensity to give when there isn't always a wealth estimate, but quotes also give you a sense of any potential reputational risk. You know, if they've been quoted as saying something particularly controversial a month ago or this year, then that could, you know, be the focus of an article that brings negative attention to your organization. And the same with descriptions as well. What other people have said about him can also give you a real sense of his reputation. So we're really just trying to give you a picture of someone, you know, what they've done, where they've got their money from, what's been said about them, and what their reputation is and how it could impact the reputation of your organization as well. And hopefully you can see that as well as showing you risk and kind of allowing you to speed up your donor due diligence and compliance, it can also be used for sort of prospect research, giving you information about wealth, assets. And actually a lot of our users have changed their processes since using us, rather than doing prospect research upstream of the process and then donor due diligence later on when there's a donation on the table. They've actually started doing both at the same time. So, you know, at upstream of the process, they'll know all the potential risks about a prospect, but also know nuggets that will allow a relationship building. And then they can go into relationship building really confident that they're, you know, they're associating themselves with someone that they would want to associate with and suits the values of the organization. So that just saves time and also sort of streamlines both processes as well. Okay, there is more to say, but I'll hand back to Jess.
Brilliant, and I will go back to screen sharing once I'm able. But thanks, Becca, that was perfect. Oh no. Yeah, I'll need to be made. There we go. Yeah, so just to recap, I guess, some of the key points, because obviously there's a lot there. So the report can obviously show you all the risks and at the moment it is a very broad brush of risk, and every organization has a tailored sort of risk requirement or interest. For some organizations that we work with in the US, tobacco is not at all risky, whereas for a lot of the organizations that we work in the UK, obviously if you're working with cancer research, then association with the tobacco industry is very risky. So really what we've tried to do there is make it filterable so that you can customize your own risk. But what really comes through is that there are just so many different ways in which you can use this tool once it's in your hands, whether it's network mapping, or just gaining a greater insight or pieces of information that can be used as icebreakers in fundraising conversations. There's so many ways to use it once it's in your hands. And so the main takeaway is the efficiency that it brings. You know, in many ways, it's not doing anything that a team of manual researchers sitting in a room with unlimited time wouldn't be able to do. But you don't have a team of manual researchers with unlimited time. So this is a way just to kind of jumpstart that whole process. So it's really, it's really a time saving, a time efficiency, and therefore money saving exercise in the long run that can help you hopefully raise more funds. And so then just quickly, while we're on the topic of money, we are obviously a commercial organization. And so if you are interested in starting a conversation with us about how you can get your hands on the tool, this is how we work. We're a subscription-based service based on the number of reports that you run. So you'll just buy X number of reports spread out over the year, and you can usually have as many users as you like across the team running those reports. It's just accessed as Becca showed. It's just a URL you can access via any web platform. So it's pretty easy to get up and running. You can share reports via hyperlink or PDF them. It can be run on people and companies as well. We didn't really touch on that for purposes of this webinar, but we do almost exactly the same for companies. So whether you're looking at partnerships, partnerships or investments that you might make, or the donation itself might be coming from a foundation, well, you can start by looking at foundation and then get to the people behind it. And we have a customer success team that will always be there to help. And so how do you actually do that? The next way to really get up and running is to test it out for yourselves, because you can take our word for it, but obviously we've shown you someone who looks good for a webinar. But if you just have a think of a couple of people that you know about, or organizations that you know about, or that you'd be interested to see what Xapien could produce the results for, send Becca an email, becca@xapien.com. We'll be circulating this deck afterwards with those names, one piece of context so that we can get the report up and running. And then we'll run a workshop call with you, run through them, see what you think, and move to the next steps if you're keen to proceed with that. That's it from me. So we'll move to Q&A, but I think Caroline, you were going to mention.
Yeah, we're actually running a face-to-face event. So if your interest has been piqued and you're interested in finding out more, we're kicking off a network that we want to set up. So philanthropic prospect professionals, P3. We are going to launch the group in January the 24th, and we invite you to come and meet us at the Royal Society of Arts, the RSA, which is based in Charing Cross in London. So look out for an event invite for that if you're interested in coming along, finding out more, but also mainly networking with your peer prospect researchers and like-minded individuals. It's not going to be another sales talk. It's going to be a chance for you to come with your questions, no pressure, meet other people, meet us, and take it from there. So if you're interested in joining our network, look out for the event invite and come along in January to join us. That'd be great.
But let's do Q&A. Have we got any Q&A in? Have we got any questions in, Zara?
Is the chat enabled?
We haven't got any questions, and yes, the chat is enabled, but we can kick it off with one of the polls that we scheduled.
Right.
Brilliant.
So the question is, how much time do you spend on due diligence? Let us know.
Can I ask a question while we're here? I'll stimulate a bit of debate. How does Xapien know that the source material, so where you're getting the information from, is genuine? Because there's so much talk about disinformation, and where's this information come from, and people sharing stuff that's not factually true. How do you know that it's true?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And basically, the system doesn't, and we don't really want it to. We kind of don't want to create a system with sort of that has the not necessarily biases, but has the nuances. So for example, if you're looking at a prospect that's very left-wing and then a right-wing press has said something terrible about them, then as a human, you can say, well, actually, will I maybe not trust that source because there's a bias against that? But it's very hard to teach an artificial intelligence system to have those kind of, those understandings and that context stuff, which is something we don't really want to do, which is why we say we're not kind of replacing human analysts, because humans still need to assess the information. So yeah, basically we've just made it really easy to see what the source is so that you can make that decision quickly.
Decision yourself.
Yeah, but the system doesn't do any kind of I'm going to exclude this blog, or I'm going to exclude this article. It shows you everything basically, and then that's why with the Cambridge quotas, it takes 2 hours of work to 30 minutes, or 2 days of work to 30 minutes. And it's not that the report takes 30 minutes to run. The report takes about 10 minutes, but actually there is then still 20 minutes, maybe half an hour of going through it, saying what's interesting to me here, what's important to me, where does this come from? Do I want to take this wealth estimate, or does this one actually come from a much more valuable source or reliable source? And you can then filter down to what's important to you. And then if you wanted to export as PDF, you could just choose what's important to you. So yeah, to answer your question, it doesn't really, but that's deliberate.
So we have a couple of questions coming through now. So
yes, brilliant. This is one of my favorite questions, because we work across 140 something languages, including different scripts, and we translate and transliterate names and languages. So you can start with Cyrillic or Arabic as the name, and it'll try all the different transcriptions of that, so in Latin script and different ways of doing it. And you can use, you can alternate between context. So you could enter someone's name in Cyrillic, but the context in English, and the system will work through all those different iterations. So actually, but it translates all the content back into English. Now, in a later iteration of the product, when we have more international users, we might not do that. We might have different functionality there. But the original language is always pulled back, and you can toggle between. But at the moment, we're sort of English first, so it translates content back into English. But a lot of our users are using us almost for that very purpose, because you might have a sense of someone in the UK because you know them and you're based in the UK, but you really don't know very much about someone from a far away jurisdiction. The only caveat, because it's worth being fully transparent, is that we're not so good in Chinese script, because it's just really hard for the tech to transliterate between all the different ways of writing it. So we're working on it. It is in there. You can test it out, but we're not proudest of it. Cyrillic and Arabic and things we're more proud of. I mean, if there are no other questions, then I guess that we should just let everyone get on there. Here we go. Dan, does Xapien keep records and copies of screenings submitted? Oh, what, for ours? And so do we keep them? That's up to the user.
Yeah, nothing is stored. It's in the cloud basically. So I can see, for example, previous reports that I've run a month or two ago, but that's totally individual to my login, and everyone has that login. But and usually it's stored in our cloud from up to 6 months to a year. We don't do anything with it. It's just there in the cloud as any information is. But actually some of our users ask for kind of custom retention rates. So we can delete it from our cloud totally after 2 weeks, or delete it from our cloud totally after a month. So we can do that. Some of our customers just find that a bit inconvenient because they'd rather be able to go back on it after 2 months or something. But because you can export it to PDF, then yeah, we can basically customize the retention rate to whatever the user wants. Hopefully that makes sense.
I think you've got our email, so you've got Becca's email, becca@xapien.com. And we'll be sending a follow-up email after this with the deck that I went through. I'm probably recording of this. So please just reach out. We're always happy to jump on a call. I know sometimes organizations, tech companies just seem like faceless entities, but we're not. We're really happy to just jump on a call at any stage. And hopefully we'll see some of you on the 24th of January. All right, unless anything else from you, Caroline, I think that's probably a wrap then.
Oh, that's it. Thank you everyone for joining us. And yeah, hopefully we'll see some of you in January.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thanks.